Hey, this is Brent,
Hey, this is Jordan.
What's up? This is Matt.
Hey, this is Sean.
and this is the Digital Ascent Podcast.
Hey, folks. Welcome to episode 22 for Digital Ascent Breaking into Computer Science. This one's going to be building on some of our other episodes and continue into the track of how can you grow your career, in IT or IT adjacent fields, or how can you get in if you're doing something else and you want to get into a field that has, more mobility, more pay, stuff like that. The other episodes I recommend checking out is episode 3, Breaking into IT. And then if you're already in IT, checking out episode 12, Career Mobility in IT, which will, help you go to the next step in your career, possibly. All right. So to help out with that, we brought on a couple of guest stars. We're going to introduce them in just a moment. Before that, we're going to start with some current events. First current event I want to talk about is Sora, which is OpenAI's new platform where they're saying that they can generate video now. And it looks incredible. I mean, some of it looks silly, much like with the AI generated hands and the photos, they just don't look like hands. And much in the same way, sometimes the videos just don't look right. Things like arms or legs or creatures pop out of nowhere, but some of them look incredible. And I'll just pitch it to the group here. Brent, Jordy, Courtney, and Bob. Have you guys looked at it at all? Do you think it's incredible? Do you think I'm, crazy? Thoughts, feelings, opinions?
I mean, from what I've seen, which is just their splash page,
Right. That's all I've seen.
Looks right. Yeah. So I didn't know if there was something else that I missed, but yeah. I mean, the samples look pretty amazing because they give you the prompts as usual and they say nothing else has been touched. It hasn't been ran through any sort of post effects or anything like that. What you see is what the AI is generating, and it's pretty wild. And I will say, talking about like the extra hands or creatures popping out, stuff like that, for this to be, I say an early iteration, it's an early iteration that they are showing us, in terms of what we've seen. Obviously, they've gone through, I'm sure, multiple iterations over the past couple of years of playing with this and deving it. Yeah. But still, I think this is in a pretty good state to be where it's at. And I mean, all the other ones, Dolly and, gosh, why can't I think of the other one we were just talking about recently, but they've all gotten a lot better as the years come along. So, this same tech here in like 2-3 years is going to be scary. Really scary.
Yeah, that's Brent, your final point, or leading into the final point would really, I'm going to talk for both me and Sean here. All right. I'm going to be the skeptic for today's this is like the tipping point for me. It's like, seeing the video, Brent, you hit the nail on the head. It's all based off of text prompt. So like I went, I pulled up a video yesterday, that Sora had created and it stitched like 5 different videos into one. That was just what it wanted the perspective to be out of the prompt it was given. And I showed it to my wife and I was like, hey, can you pick out anything that looks like wonky out of this? And she was like, no. Like, we were sitting there for a minute and I was like, the wonkiness is that it was created by an AI. And she said, huh? So we just kind of like, it's very weird, or maybe, I want to say scary, but that seems like, not a good word. It's moving very rapidly. Like this time last year, we were fawning over, just having ChatGPT, and now I can go put in a text prompt and have an entire video created. It's kind of weird. I don't know how to feel about it. Yeah, it's cool, but it's scary.
It was like 6 months ago, the very first generation of these videos came out, and they looked like, they were impressive, but they looked bad. Like they looked
like garbage,
jittery. Yeah, I mean, they all looked like Salvador Dali paintings, basically.
Can I ask a question? Just before we get in, I don't want to drag on too long, but are they able to make the rapid advancements that they are? Maybe this isn't a rapid advancement, but it seems kind of fast.
Yeah.
Are they able to move this fast because AI has been, it's where it's at now? You know what I mean? Could they do this? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if that question makes sense.
No, I get it. I get it. You know, I read at least one quote saying that that they're further along than they're releasing, and
Which makes sense.
um
If this is what
that
we're getting as the consumer,
yeah that
what's on the other side of the fence?
yeah, and it seems, and I read at least one quote basically saying that they can't release everything because it would be bad for like societal stability if they were just to dump the purse on the table basically and be like, look
Which
what's
is
in their
where
bag.
my yeah,
And
it's
like honestly, I feel like our society is going to struggle to to keep up. I feel like I just read a quote from, oh gosh, I want to say it was somebody that used to work at Pixar and was like at the C-suite level. I'm sorry, I don't have it. I'll have to go look it up and see if I can find it. And they were basically like, you know, animators are done in like the next few years. Like, have you seen the Sora videos? Good luck. Right. Once it starts getting long memory and you can start really tying things together. I mean, it's I guess I would argue that you're going to need somebody to drive the ship and like really detail out the art and stuff like that. But you're not going to need the same team. Who knows? May you know, in my dream world, it means that we just get more artwork, right? We just get more high quality artwork
Right.
instead of
Yeah.
reduced. You know, maybe DreamWorks cranks out 12 videos a year now. Like we get like one blockbuster banger, you know, from DreamWorks a month instead of waiting, you know, to get that one a year for our kids. I don't know, just food for thought. So, Courtney, Bob, have either of you guys played with it at all, or like seen it or done anything with it or whatever? I don't think you can play with it yet, so I probably said that incorrectly. But have you guys
Yeah,
read anything about it?
I've seen it, but I'm just yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
I think about the AI in developer terms and not in art terms still. So
Sure.
yeah, I don't know, where what it can actually lead to.
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. It's hard to predict. Courtney, any thoughts?
I just explored the landing page a little bit.
Oh, cool.
It is slightly terrifying,
Right.
but I think that to me, anything generative AI is slightly terrifying, but also awe-inspiring.
Right.
And it's also fascinating to mentally try to break down what you're looking at in terms of image generation or video generation, but also text generation, sound generation as you work through it when you know that it's AI generated. Like then you
Hmm.
can kind of pick up on the subtle clues, but if I was looking at, this stock footage of a cat trying to wake its owner up that's
Until you
generated by
notice
OpenAI,
yeah, it looks good until you like notice the arm does something weird there with the blanket.
the extra leg, yes.
It
Yeah. But I probably wouldn't have really paid attention to that without that observer bias of knowing that
mhm,
it's generated
of
by
knowing that
AI.
you, yeah, yeah. Imagine looking at
Yes.
15-second
Yes.
TikToks. Good luck, sucker. Which one's the AI in your 100 videos you just looked at?
Exactly. So how do you train any models to identify? You're basically doing anomaly detection, but
Yeah,
then yeah, it's yeah.
it's a cat and mouse game.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, it's wild stuff. We're recording this on the 18th of February, and we currently don't have access to it. I'm who knows by the time this drops on the first, maybe we'll have access to Sora, and we'll be cranking out videos and playing with it. I don't know. What I will say is that from tinkering with AIs in my personal life, anything that seems to be like hitting the market 6 months later, it seems like you can go build it and run it in your own home. So my guess is that just like you can run Stable Diffusion in your own on your own computer, it will be 6 months before anybody can create, you know, basically any video with caveats, of course. So I guess what I will say here in closing notes before we move on to the next topic, which is security oriented, is please be aware that these things are coming. These AI videos are coming, and they're not going to say, "Hey, I'm an AI video," always. So just something to keep in mind. Moving on to the next topic, research has shown that 15% of all emails sent in 2023 were malicious. Um, wow, that's To me,
Not
that's a
surprising to me,
staggering.
honestly.
Yeah, I mean, like it's not surprising. I'm still like, wow, what a staggering amount. The security around email is actually, for those who aren't like deep into IT, security around email is actually like pretty like weak in terms of like sender validation and stuff. Like you can make sure that when I like if I send you an email, I can set up records and make it so you can check and make sure that I sent that. But if I haven't sent up those records, which take detailed IT knowledge and expertise, there's no way to really validate that. And I don't know, email, I still view email and SMS as kind of like a Wild West space. So it's crazy. I do want to mention as part of this that like 50%, I think it's like 40% of security incidents and attacks start with the business email compromise. Most of that is somebody sending an email and you click on it and now you're infected. So just something to keep in mind there. Anyone have any thoughts, feelings, opinions on that one?
I like the article. I like how it was saying QR codes or attachments outnumber any other method nearly 7-1 in terms of how they're getting these people through the malicious emails. It's kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah,
I can see the like links in general. I could see that. I would have never said QR codes. That's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. QR codes are super dangerous, right? Because companies want to send them so they can get messages out, and companies want to deliver them to customers so they can get messages out, and it's just a quick way to deliver somebody a link when you can't deliver them a link, right? You just put it out there and it's a public link, but there's not like a lot of ways to do what I would call like soft detonate those things, where you can see where you're going before you actually get there. Like if you just hover over a link, you can see it goes somewhere, but you can't.
Yeah,
no
one's going to take those and put them through like a decryptor. Like no one's going to do that. They're going to pull up their phone, they're going to scan it, they're going to go to it, and next thing you know, they're compromised.
What I'll say is that anecdotally, over the last, I watch, an email box that gets reported phishing emails, and I'll say anecdotally over the last like year, there's been a significant increase in QR code scams, and they're a real nuisance. I mean, there's just I don't know what else to say. That's it's a real nuisance. When they come through, they just look like a picture to the email filter, right? Email filters seem to not be able to be like, ooh, this is a QR code. And even if they could, how do they know it's a good one or a bad one? And it's all very challenging. You can invert the colors and do other weird things with them to make it like, like bypass some of the mechanical controls or do like, whatever. There's stuff you can do. It's very problematic.
This is where we need AI. We need AI spam filters, man. That's what we need.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
they're coming. They're coming.
Yeah.
They'll be able to scan that image and be like, "Yep, QR code. Let's soft detonate it, just like you said. Oh, it's a bad one. Filter just like anything else. I can see that.
Yeah, it'd be nice. All right, next topic. Moving on. Happier topic. Microsoft, is trying to make good on their promise to, in my mind, they're trying to win hearts and minds, right? Because it just did some enormous acquisitions that were very contentious. And
Absolutely.
now they've got yeah. So now Microsoft was successful in their acquisitions, which we previously talked about. Gosh, I want to say it was in multiple episodes. And now that that's done, they're going on a hearts and minds campaign to make sure the government entities don't immediately go, man, we have buyer's remorse on that one. And I feel like they fired a ton of staff. I don't have that.
I was going to say, let's not forget about that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just fired a bunch of people across the board. Activision was hit real hard. This is supposed to allow them to kind of branch into other markets. And I think the conversation that was kind of circulating this week was that Game Pass has not been, it's kind of stagnating as far as like new subscribers are concerned. The total count is like it was just under like 35 million. But there are a group of people who think that number is kind of inflated because Xbox just converted, Xbox Live Gold or whatever the base, month-to-month subscription was called into like Pass Core. So they really just because the older subscription was not considered Game Pass. So all this to say, it seems like on paper there's been a really big jump, but in all actuality, Microsoft has just changed terminology. So the amount of better, and I'm not sure if that's good. I'm sure if that's bad. 34 million people sounds like a lot of people to me, especially if they're subscribing month to month. But the fuel to the rumor, if you will, was that Xbox is trying to recoup some money because Game Pass it's not sustainable. So they are going to test the waters with dropping, certain IPs on other platforms. I think because they didn't name 4 games that were going to the other platforms, but speculation is that it's going to be Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush, and then 2 Obsidian games. I think we talked about this yesterday, the day before, like Pentiment.
Yeah. Pentiment
and maybe
and Grounded.
Grounded?
It was Grounded.
Okay,
It's
and
Grounded.
all great games. They're not console sellers, but they're all great games.
Unique.
I'm very unique. Yeah, and I don't really.
Sea of Thieves is a big one.
That's true. Yeah, these are. I'm really just excited for what this means for the future. Like, is this kind of like the start of? I'd love to be able to play whatever I wanted. You know what I mean? And they said that it won't be for every title, but they'll look at it on a case-to-case basis. And I think that's good enough to start. I'm going to stop rambling because I could talk about this for another hour. But yeah, good stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's crazy also. I would love to be able to, subscribe to Game Pass and then take those games, in some way to another console.
Yep.
That would just be, I mean, that would be great. Boot on my Switch and now I'm cloud gaming or something on there. They're already having
It's very similar, it's very similar to having like your main desktop rig and then being able to swap over to a handheld, which is awesome.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
I'd like to be able to do that more across the 8 million devices I have in my home. So in agreement with you there, buddy.
All right. So with that in mind, folks, we're going to go ahead and move on to the main topic. So, tonight we have 2, or I guess whenever you're listening to it, tonight right now. So tonight we have 2 fantastic guest stars on here, Courtney Everest and Bob Baxter. The reason why we brought them on is because they do programming or software development and data science for a living. Not, one does one does the other. And, we've talked in the past about, there's a lot of different ways to get into, IT or security or these verticals, and programming is a way to get into IT, and then, or I shouldn't say into IT, or into a tech field, and then eventually into security. And, I thought I'd go ahead and bring in Courtney and Bob and, let them talk about their experience, prior to getting into, the computer science vertical and how they were able to get into it and so on and so forth. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and do some quick introductions, and we're going to start with Courtney. Go ahead, give us, a quick, who are you, and, a quick little resume and so on and so forth, if you would, please.
I appreciate that, Matt. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, everyone. I'm Courtney Everest. I am currently based in Nashville, and I work as a data scientist for a Midwest-based professional services company. We specialize in marketing and technology services. And I got into data science by way of marketing and advertising. So I spent 10 years in client-facing roles and account management roles, 5 of which were exclusively focused with automotive clients, before kind of seeing the opportunity and the career objectives that I could gain from switching to a more technical role and pivoting into data science.
Awesome. Giving out some, like, just so as you go through this episode, or as we go through this episode, I want you the listener to keep something in mind, and that is that the median salary for data science in the U.S., based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is 103 grand a year, and there's expected to be a 35% job growth. So in the past, we've talked about security having a 30% job growth, and if you're looking to get somewhere, security is a good place to be. This is another area where if you are seeking opportunity, there are jobs here in data science. So, you know, Courtney was able to transition in data science, and just, keep that in mind. Bob, would you go ahead and give us, a quick introduction and, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I'm Bob Baxter. Was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I came from a non-tech field and transitioned into software development through a software boot camp. Right now, I work at Lumi Deodorant as a back-end engineer. So working with the analytics teams to like get the pipeline from all of our vendors like Target and feed that to analytics teams.
Awesome. And as we go through this, and then you listen to Bob talk about what he does and so on and so forth, keep in mind that average salary for a software developer, quality assurance analysts, and testers comes in to be 120K a year or 125K a year, and they're expecting growth up to 25%. Once again, this is enormous, and in this case, um, right now there's 180, or sorry, uh, there's 1,800,000 jobs out there, and they're expecting an additional 25% growth. I mean, there's going to be a lot more jobs out there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. And so there's a lot more there. I personally, maybe we'll touch on this at some point. I don't feel like generative AI is going to necessarily crush these jobs. I use AI for programming, on a regular basis, and I mean, like, it does the job, but it also lies a bunch as well. So, um, maybe we'll touch on that later. So, with that in mind, I'm going to kind of open the floor to Courtney and open the floor to you, Courtney and Bob, and have you guys just tell us a little bit more about your experiences transitioning into programming from your previous positions, and yeah, whoever wants to jump in, just go ahead and let's start talking about it.
Sure, I'll start. I started college right after high school, made horrible grades first 2 years because I had like no academic discipline. So I joined the Army Reserve, which led to a deployment to Iraq, which meant multiple years away from school. But I eventually graduated college when I was 26 in a non-STEM field, and the next year I got a job at the Department of Veterans Affairs in their disability benefits division. I spent the next 9 years working my way up the ladder from the call center, the claim intake, to claim processing, then claim deciding. And there was one more rung of the ladder before I reached the top as an individual contributor, which could have taken years to get. And as much as I loved our mission, I just wasn't satisfied with my day-to-day role. I'd always been interested in tech. I record music at home. I've always told myself I should have pursued computer science at college. Many of the games I play will result in me creating some kind of spreadsheet for it. And in every job role at the VA, I would build a tool in Excel to make our job easier. So that being said, there was a point in the middle of my VA career climb when I looked at software boot camps, but they just weren't as widespread as they are now. And I couldn't see myself not working for 3 to 6 months to join a boot
Right.
camp.
Mhm.
But towards the end of the climb, I saw that National Software School had night courses. So at the age of 34, I applied and was accepted. And it was one of the most difficult yet rewarding, things I've ever done. So it's, it was an intensive 1 year course, 3 nights every week. We'd spend 3 hours on campus, or 3 nights every week. We'd spend 3 hours on campus. Then we'd spend every Saturday morning until noon, usually working in groups. For 6 months, we learned front end technologies, finished it with a capstone. So I built a web app for my mobile, for like a mobile game I was playing at the time, and I threw it up on Reddit and immediately had a bunch of users. Then the last 6 months, we learned backend technologies, and I built the backend for that app for Final Capstone. And I didn't fully consider it at the time, but doing it that way gave me, a more polished and functional project in my resume because I'd been iterating on it for months based on real user feedback. So the combination of that and Nashville Software School's interview and career guidance helped me land my first software development job within 2 weeks of graduating. That's kind of my story.
Nice, man.
That's
So
awesome.
it sounds like it took you. So it does sound like you brought some skills to the table, and I do want to point out that I do feel like you can do, like, in my opinion, Excel is somewhere between coding light and coding, and I'm not really sure where in there. I think a lot of it depends on your own personal skill set. I know now that you can bring Python to Excel, and that's a completely different story. Um, but it sounds like you were doing, some actual coding in Excel. Were you doing like VBAs, or were you in like scripting in there, or were you just writing macros, or were you just, doing complicated formulas type of thing?
I was just doing complicated formulas. I didn't
Yeah.
even. I was about to start touching VBA, and then I applied to software school.
Man, so do you feel like you brought any like prior like programming skill set knowledge to the table, or did you show up and was like, what is it? Can you please explain what a variable and a function is to me?
Yeah, I had about the only thing it gave me was logic flow,
Yeah,
um, Booleans
yeah,
and so forth. But other than that,
that makes
I
sense.
was pretty fresh.
Awesome. Well, I think that logic flow makes a big difference. Like so I don't know if I'd call myself fluent, but I can functionally use like a couple of different languages, and I have found that um, the logic in understanding like that, then understanding logics and how basic like things operate, like booleans, um, or ints or strings or things like that, makes a big difference. So, but that's crazy. I mean, it sounds like you went from I know what a boolean is to I now have a job in like a year and a quarter or something,
Yeah,
a year and 2 weeks, something like that.
yeah, that's it.
Wow, that's a wild success story there. And like, if you don't mind me asking, was it like, did you feel like the job paid like, did it pay well? Like, did you meet the expectations you were hoping to meet, like from the boot camp or school?
I mean, from in that 2 weeks, I got a $20,000 bump in my pay
Wow, that's
from
awesome.
a government job I'd been working for what 9 years.
You're not for the record, you're not the only person that has a story. I have a very dear friend of mine that they worked, as basically as a contractor, not directly for the company, for the government, but for a company that like worked for governments. And he had a he had a master's degree, and he was like, man, I'm never going to make more than $50,000 a year. And so he basically has the same story. Went to night school, grounded out for a year, really hard experience. Came on the other end of it, got a job. Um, Courtney, let's go ahead and let's talk about you. What was your experience? I believe you said that you were in customer relations basically, and to some degree or another, and decided that was no longer what you were going to do.
Yeah, Bob's experience definitely resonates with me because I also came from a non-STEM field. So I came from a liberal arts academic education. I focused on political science and anthropology. So I
Wow.
definitely, when I was in an academic environment, never even considered computer science or a technical field. I think I had one very ill-fated C++ class about 20
I,
years ago in high school that drove me insane.
yeah.
And looking back, I'm like, oh man, I wish I had been a little bit more open minded
Yeah.
because that might have been a great course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I similar to what Bob described, I found myself at a point in my professional career where I was 7, 10 years along a career track in advertising and marketing, and while I really enjoyed certain aspects of my job, I was coming up against a ceiling in terms of earning potential, growth potential for the role, you know, I could either attempt to go into management at a huge publicly traded company, or I could kind of go with what pulled me and what actually made me happy about my job, which was consistently and more the technical side of things, the harder analytics side. I was very client-oriented and focused on retaining revenue. But what I really enjoyed was looking at the hard data of advertising and digging into the specific behavior of, you know, our company's proprietary ad placement algorithms. So what I realized was the things about my job that I actually enjoyed on a regular basis were not the core functions of the role that I had contracted into. So I started exploring higher education, looking at master's programs, and similar to what Bob described, I wasn't really jazzed about the idea of putting my earning potential on hold for a full 2 to 3 years while I paid $30,000 to $50,000 a year out of pocket to go through a master's program. Yeah. So I wound up, I also wound up going to a boot camp at Nashville Software School, and I learned about that boot camp from a grassroots organization that's called Ladies Get Paid. And it's this fantastic organization where they hold workshops to help women and honestly anyone to learn how to advocate for yourselves in the salary negotiation process. You know, money is not a thing that any of us are really taught to talk about in a frank and honest manner. And it's even more of a difficult and sensitive issue in terms of advocating for ourselves. And so I went to this workshop, had a great experience, and met woman after woman who talked about Nashville Software School. So I wound up looking up their programs. They originally started in the more of the development space, and then they've branched out into analytics and data science. And I was really drawn to their approach to education, which is very much a practical, hands-on, real-world application approach to preparing people for working in a technical space. And that very much appealed to me. Wound up doing some preparatory courses and then applying for their data science boot camp. And so I think end to end I went through about 18 months of night school there. But it was a great experience and very full, very fast paced, but it was a good decision.
I feel like I know the answer, but I'm just going to ask it bluntly. Do you feel like you, did you reach like the salary goals that you were trying to reach? And like, did you, at the beginning, I'm sure you were like, ooh, I make this much right now, but I would rather make that much. And do you feel like you actually got that experience and that you met your goal?
I definitely feel like I got out of the program what my objective was. Yes, it is. It definitely, I had to have a kind of a difficult conversation with my manager when I left my advertising role, because the company was trying to figure out, okay, how can we, retain our employees better? And it's a little bit of an awkward conversation to tell your manager, yeah, I'm getting a 65% increase. Like it's nothing that you could.
Yeah.
It is not within the.
You cannot do it. There's nothing to be done here.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be done here. It's not you. It's just the job market, and but more than just the job market.
It's funny. It's saying I need more than your boss makes, please.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you have that conversation and have it realistically come out as, oh, no problem, you're that good of an earner, we'll do that.
I know.
Right?
Like, I want to be honest with you. Yeah, it's not you as a manager. It's not our team. It's not our department. It's just, it is what the job market is. And that certainly depends on whatever industry you go into with a particular technical angle. It varies widely. But I definitely do not regret all the lost sleep and the blood, sweat, and tears that I put into pivoting careers.
Get it. I'm glad to hear that. And I'll open the floor to both of you with this one. Do you let's say, I'm Johnny, and I didn't make it through college because it just didn't work out for me for any number of reasons, and I'm doing this or that, the other thing. Do you feel like I can still, can I still go to this school and get a transition out and get a win here, or do you feel like missing that 2 or 4 year degree is going to lock me out of jobs and positions that pay the way that you would hope to get paid?
I don't think the 2 or 4 year degree is necessary for software development. You don't even need to go to a boot camp. It's the whole job is merit based. So if you have the drive, you have the interest. I mean, you could essentially learn all of this on your own through free online resources and get the job.
That's awesome to hear. I mean, that's for whatever it's worth, that's my perception. And just for the listeners, my background with programming and stuff like that is that I had a course here. It was a C++ course in college. I kind of refer to it as my errant C++ course that I took. It was a terrible experience. And I came away from it going, I will never take a job that requires programming. For the record, programming is 10% of my job at this point because I have to build my own toolkits, basically. And then I had an errant Java class, and that wasn't really so much fun. And an errant JavaScript, I had this, that, and the other thing, but it never really stuck. And then one day I decided I was gonna learn Python, and so I just set out to build a game of Battleship. And I'm not saying it was a good game of Battleship, but I did successfully build a game of Battleship. And with time and effort, I imagine I could have made it a good game of Battleship, and I could have actually given it a front end that was better than just a bunch of X's. And I didn't really have a school. I never learned Python in school. I just started. I don't remember what I went to, but I just started learning Python at a website for free. I downloaded, I think it was SoloLearn on my phone at the time. That's 8 years ago. And I started plugging away at the Python lessons. And before I knew it, I could write for loops. And before I knew it, I could program firewalls with it. And now I perform what I consider to be detailed data analytics on a regular basis and interact with APIs and this and that and the other thing. And I've never had any formal training in Python. I just started doing it. So, Courtney, do you agree? No degree needed?
I think this brings up a really good point because
I like this. Yeah.
I frame Bob's role a little bit differently than maybe what I do. So I definitely, Bob, I look at what you do, my perception of what you do, and I would define your role as more hands-on technical on a day-to-day basis. In what I do, I think of myself as someone who uses programming in my role, but I am not a programmer at my core. So I think the emphasis on supporting education is proportionally a little bit different. As a data scientist, I don't have a master's degree. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and anthropology, so I don't even have a bachelor's degree in a STEM field. That's not super common. Usually you run into people who have undergraduate degrees or grad degrees in STEM fields, and then they also go on to get a STEM degree as a master's or a PhD student. So I feel like I am kind of the data science equivalent of somebody who maybe didn't fully get their bachelor's, if that makes sense. It's in data science, there's more of an emphasis placed on foundational statistics, scientific methodology, hypothesis testing, some things that are, kind of a little more formal and structured, that live outside of the technical frameworks that we learn on the job. So for data science roles and in the data science job search, I think that people who have higher level degrees in STEM fields, they tend to have a leg up. And there is a bit more, it opens doors that you might not otherwise get your foot in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Do you feel like in the data science world, you've got to bring, a strong foundation of mathematics? Like, do I need to go back and make sure I know what calculus is and how to run differential equations if I wanted to cut over? Like, I'll be honest, I don't want to do that. Even thinking about it, even saying those words, I'm like, that doesn't sound.
Listen, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. I mean, I love data science. I love the application of mathematical concepts, but I don't find joy in the theory of the math on its own. I think it really depends on what kind of a company you're interviewing with and what kind of a data science team you're looking to become part of. Data science lies at the confluence of statistics and mathematics. It also lies at the confluence of business intelligence, and then also lies at the confluence of programming. So you can have a data scientist who comes into data science from a very experiential business background, or a math background, or a scientific research background. And depending on your company's go-to-market strategy, the value that they place on different aspects of that will vary. So I think the key thing is to figure out, like, what's your best positioning in the marketplace? How can you best present yourself? What do you have to leverage and what do you have to offer? Because you may have something to offer from a business logic perspective that a 22-year-old who's taken 3 times as many math courses as you have might not see, or they might not have the experience to know about.
Even though they can run differential equations all day. And never.
Yeah, I think Courtney brings up a good point too, because it's a lot less about positioning yourself. I mean, well, it is about obviously positioning yourself in the industry you're trying to get a job in, but sometimes even more so at a granular level, it's more about positioning yourself for the company, because the company, their values, like she said, like the go-to-market strategy and all that, that really is going to set the tone for what they're looking for in a potential hire. And that may be the book smarts. It might be the degree, or it could be the 5 years of experience that they want to see, or just, okay, they've been tinkering in their basement. They built this front end to this game app. They built this back end to this game app. That's exactly what we're looking for. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. Like, it doesn't matter that they don't have an associate's or a bachelor's or whatever the case may be. I mean, I've seen that in, the MSP industry as well. A lot of companies they're looking for, hey, here's our baseline. We want at least an associate's in this or a bachelor's in that for this job role. And then on the flip side of that very same coin, you have the MSPs that, they want somebody that has a knack for it. They want somebody, if it's a help desk position, they want somebody first and foremost that can talk to people, because that negative stigma of that IT guy, that computer guy, that, his personality is not great, and he has no social life whatsoever, and he handles customers terribly. you see this like in shows and movies, not so much anymore, but you used to, this quote unquote nerd or geek or whatever, that kind of negative stigma they've taught around folks. A lot of that, I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of that's true, but you do typically find a lot of introverts, but you also have folks that are able to kind of balance that. I like to consider myself kind of like dead in the middle. I'm able to handle folks just fine. Is it exhausting? Sure it is. I think a lot of people would probably agree with that, but anyways, all that to say, I think, every company is going to have a specific kind of baseline they're looking for. And then what kind of sweetens the deal is going to be quite different. How you find that out, unfortunately, sometimes you may not know going in, unless you have kind of like an in, or people that work there, or there's sites like Glassdoor, where people kind of share their experiences anonymously about hey, yeah, I worked at this company and it was great, or I worked at this company and it was crap, that sort of thing. If you're able to get some insight there, I mean, it may be useful. I'm not going to say it's always true. You could very well find a employee that's venting and they were in the wrong, and you're going to get a negative, kind of connotation around a company that you were previously interested in. But yeah, there certainly isn't a one size fits all, I don't believe.
Yeah, I can feel that for sure. I did want to do like a quick day in the life of, if you guys didn't mind, just so people who are thinking about getting in the field, might have more of an idea if they maybe they don't know anybody who's in computer science right now, or data science. So we'll start with Bob. Bob, can you give us a quick day in the life, man? What is, you wake up, it's Tuesday morning, what's your day look like? Is it 6 hours of meetings?
I wish it were that easy to say. So most software development teams will use some kind of like agile methodology, which at the most basic level is just a way for companies like break down projects into phases. So your day to day is going to depend on how loose or strict your team applies those principles. So like I would say on the looser end, the developers' days are mostly spent like writing code. So you could have a Monday morning stand-up meeting where you meet with the team, discuss the work ahead, talk about what you're currently working on, possibly discuss any issues you're having. And then you spend the rest of like the week doing things like building features, reviewing code, fixing defects, depending on like the team or the task. It could be done alone or done paired up with another developer. But overall, you usually be able to structure your day however you like, depending on if you have any calls, with the manager, one-on-ones, or with the team. But on the stricter side of things, because I've had both of these situations, on the stricter side of agile, developer could be in a Scrum team where everyone is more involved in the planning process for their project roadmap. So the work could be the exact same as before, but you'll have a more frequent cadence of calls and quote unquote collaboration. So instead of only the Monday morning stand-up meetings, there could be stand-ups every morning or sometimes twice a day, because management is like really wanting to make sure that this particular feature is pushed out the door as soon as possible. So there are more structured meetings spread throughout the week on this kind of cadence, and for like planning new work and reviewing past work. So a typical day could have a morning meeting, an hour or so of work, then a team planning call, lunch, another few hours of work, then possibly another team call before the end of the day. So it widely varies based on your team.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I've worked some different positions, and some of them, it's like, you're in seat, and you're in seat from this hour to this hour. You're doing these things, and it's all highly structured. I have other positions where it's like, please show up and submit 40 hours worth of work. In fact, actually, here's a stack of work. If it takes you more than 40 hours, it's your problem, right? And so it really depends, on, where you work. Courtney, my friend, what's the day in the life? It's Wednesday morning. What's your day look like, or week, whatever? We'll start on Monday mornings. Maybe you have stand-ups on Mondays and Mondays only.
Well, similar to Bob, it varies very much depending on the structure of your team. So with my team and my day-to-day role as it is now, I would say on average 80% of my time is focused on producing client deliverables. That is partly a function of my company's structure as a professional services organization. So where our focus and our business model is based around billable hours and billable time. Peppered within that 80%, I may have some client facing meetings. I may be working with internal stakeholders. I may be talking to the PMO department, working with project managers to set realistic expectations. But the majority of my time is spent developing solutions. And quote unquote developing solutions may be actively coding, or it may be working in a BI platform that our clients rely on. So we might deliver solutions in a data science platform as a model, as a pickled file or something persisted, or we might deliver solutions for them within their own BI platform of choice. So a good portion of my time is spent copying across platforms and mediums. But the technical side of my time is generally focused on developing models, building ETL pipelines, doing exploratory data analysis, data validation, testing. I might be back testing. I might be looking at volume of scores coming in from a daily batch process, and then talking to the end user team who's going to use it from the client side in terms of maybe building advertising audiences or targeting or something like that. So it's a pretty end-to-end wide range of the hands-on part of data science, but it really depends on what cycle your project is in, what your client needs, and what your manager and your PMO are focusing on.
Awesome. And if somebody's interested in this, let's say somebody here heard you talking about this, Courtney, and was like, man, that sounds better than whatever I'm doing today. What would you kind of recommend? How would you recommend they get started? Do you feel like that do you have any websites that you would recommend, or if not specific websites, do they need to go to like a Nashville school, or do you think that they should just, pick a learning website and start plugging away at Print Hello World, or what are your thoughts there?
That is a really good and very pertinent and actionable way of positioning that question, Matt. I think it involves you have to be honest with yourself about, okay, what do I want to do? What am I realistically interested in? What is going to hold my attention? What am I going to find fulfilling in the long term? And then where am I now? Right? If you're sitting there and you're working in some sort of technical role and you already have a computer science degree, you're in a different position than I was when I was looking to pivot careers. So I guess be honest with yourself about what your goals are and what you bring to the table. Be honest with yourself, but don't sell yourself short at the same time. For me, that process was, where do I actually want to go, and what do I feel good about potentially investing money in to make that career transition? I was focused on kind of building a foundation. I didn't feel like I came from a really strong technical foundation, and so I wanted to build a foundation so that I could feel comfortable and feel confident in the job market, and that I had a foundation on which to leverage professional experience, business experience, client-facing experience that other potential data scientists might not have. And I could offset that with technical skills.
That makes sense. Um, Bob, to you, sir.
For
What
software,
would you?
yeah, for software development, I would argue that having the ability to learn things on your own is like a hard requirement. And luckily, I think
Yeah.
that's a skill that can be improved upon. So I would recommend starting with a free online resource like freecodecamp.org or theodinproject.com, which is a little bit,
Hmm.
tougher. Like they'll teach you the fundamentals, help you work towards building smaller projects, and they also have information on preparing for a job search. But even if you know for sure that you want to attend a software boot camp, taking the initiative to learn on your own and having something to show for it will at the least make you a better candidate to get selected for the school, and it'll give you a leg up on the rigorous workload since you won't be coming in completely fresh. And I personally don't believe boot camps are required to get a dev job, but they do make it a lot easier. They can offer a structured schedule, accountability, a higher incentive since you're paying for the service,
Yeah, you're
hands-on
chipping in every
guidance. You have
freaking month.
people there to
Yeah.
help you. Yeah. A community of developers is nice, and they also will have connections to companies that like to benefit from the junior developers coming out of there, the feeders.
Hmm.
So, uh, but like Courtney said, be transparent. Like you have to be honest with yourself because boot camps can't do the actual work that it takes for you to get the job in the field. They can't study for you, they can't write code for you, they can't build your projects, and they can't apply to the jobs for you. So you'll need to do all those things whether you attend a boot camp or not. But so you don't have to have one, but it's very beneficial.
Mm. Yeah, that all makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
as, yep. Go ahead, Courtney. Sorry.
I think one last thing that I would add in is being strategic about what your current job can do for you in terms of your career growth.
Ooh, yeah, that's
So
a good
there
one.
were positions where, I mean, there were points where I was in boot camp, and so from, God, I don't know, like 5 p.m. to 1 a.m., I was studying every day, and then basically every other hour of the day that I wasn't sleeping, I was working in my current role. And I found ways to kind of shoehorn or meld, incorporate the things that I was working on from boot camp into my role. I wasn't, at that point, I wasn't excited about the growth potential of the job that I was doing every day, but I realized how I could incorporate an increasing skill set into that job and then document it in order to demonstrate that in a job search.
Mm.
So I think
Yeah.
it also, I would encourage people to reframe your quote unquote day job. Don't think of it just in terms of the work that you're doing for a company, but look at it in terms of how that work can work for you. Because when it comes down to it, when the rubber meets the road, whether it's data science or software development or whatever job, if you are looking to pivot careers, you are already a professional, you are already in the earning workforce, and you want to increase your earning potential, the best thing you can do in a job interview for a potential company is to demonstrate that you can add value and that you
Hmm.
can identify areas to add value. You can identify areas to leverage your skill set. You can identify areas to bring your teammates along with you. At that point, do it for yourself. Don't think about what you're doing for your current role because it's a bigger picture.
I feel like that was incredibly insightful, and um, I think it's something that everybody should really take note of. It's important that you're looking at what you're doing in your. I mean, I guess I personally feel like it's important that you're looking at what you're doing in your current role in terms of ways that you're impacting your company, and as you eventually seek out um, other roles, it's important that you find ways to basically frame shop and brand that, maybe frame brand and shop, and I don't know, somewhere in there. The point is that Courtney's driving at, at least in my opinion, Courtney's driving at a really important point, that um, being able to really figure out how are you applying value. And, then, I would say the next part is figuring out how what you're doing in your own time, to better yourself and bring that back and show that you can then take your own time and turn that into, more value for the company is, I mean, that's resume gold, in my personal opinion. Show that you went to a programming workshop and then demonstrate on your resume that you built a little app that your team uses now that saves, 5 minutes per person across 10 people, right?
Yep.
Suddenly you saved an hour a day or something. And, that may not seem like a lot of money right away, but what if it's 10 people and, it's $20, an hour for each person? Yeah, I mean, like the numbers start stacking up. What if you can spread that to other departments eventually, right? I mean, like, we're getting pretty pie in the sky at this point, but I feel
I
like the
think
point
too,
stands.
yeah, the point does stand. I think too, it's very easy when you've been in a position for a long amount of time to the point of being super comfortable to some extent, but then also knowing that, hey, is there money on the table here? Like, could I be making more? Is there something
Right.
else out there for me? I think you do get to the point where I believe Courtney brought up, I think Bob did as well, the kind of selling yourself short. You don't intentionally do it. I think it's just you are doing this day in and day out. You've done this day in and day out for years. You don't look at it as a value add anymore necessarily, or you're not interpreting it as that for whatever new company you may be interviewing for, because, well, it's just something you do every day. It's part of your core job function at whatever job you're currently doing. I think it's very important to make a list, parse everything out that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and look at that big picture, that high level view of, okay, these three things that I'm doing in the morning, this is ensuring that our clients are, their backups are safe. I'm reviewing alerts on backups. I'm ensuring that their client data is secure, all this good stuff, or whatever the case may be. I'm meeting with the team for this hour and I'm pushing forward business objectives and, helping our operational maturity level grow, things like that. Like, able to like pick that stuff apart and really sell yourself, essentially, I think is a huge deal.
Yep.
Instead of going down, I think a lot of people, I see a lot of applicants like this, people that I've helped hire, where they're very granular on, did this thing with this thing. And it's like, okay, well, that's neat. And we've got other applicants here that said the same thing, but like, why did you do that? What did you do with that particular function, that particular piece of technology? What was its purpose? Like, how far down the rabbit hole did you go with this thing? And what were you trying to solve for with this previous company? So that, when we're hiring this person, we're like, oh, we can use somebody with that sort of knowledge, that sort of line of thinking. I think it goes a long ways to set yourself apart from the competition. And it's funny because you see more and more kind of recommendations in terms of like resume builders, and heck, I think even AI is a little bit more, hey, kind of explain how this helps the business, sell yourself better. Like the little the GPT coaches we've talked about and stuff like that. I'm pretty positive they have a couple of like career builder ones and like hiring ones, resume builder ones, and all that are like, hey, that's all great. Oh, C++, Python, all this. What did you do with it? Like, how did that help drive the business forward? How did that help drive you and your team forward? That sort of thing.
Awesome. Good insight also. As we start kind of wrapping up, I kind of want to open the table to either Jordy or Brent. Anything else you want to ask our experts here and let them weigh in on?
Gosh, I don't know. You guys knocked it out of the park. I appreciate both of you being here.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like we had a great episode. Courtney,
yeah, absolutely,
Bob,
absolutely,
great. Yeah. All right. I want to open up the table the other way then. Courtney, Bob, anything either of you, feel like we just missed and you want to talk about, or like, anything at all, or just like anything you want to plug? I don't know. The floor is yours.
Shout out to the mom, dad, sister, brother, friends.
Whatever, man.
No, I
Nothing.
think I think I laid it all out on the table there.
Awesome. Awesome. Courtney, Phil, same way.
Largely the same way. The only thing that I would add, which is totally biased on my part, but it is in terms of pivoting careers, is, file this under things that you never learn or that you wish somebody had told you, is that when you pivot careers, you're going to have to relearn how to manage your own bad habits. Because you might be working in a career that presses different buttons. So for me in data science, it was, I was diagnosed with ADD and learned to manage it, 20 years ago when I was in college. And when I moved into programming as a core function of my job, I very quickly realized that I had to learn how to manage it in a different way and reframe how I looked at it. Because the function of programming as part of your job is, it's so fantastic for fueling the OCD. And I love it. I love to be really OCD about like commenting or code syntax or whatnot. But if you are pivoting careers as a professional, as someone who's already established something in a certain field and you know how to manage yourself, you know how to manage your bad habits, give yourself that space to learn how to manage yourself in a new context. And it's going to look different for everybody, but it might be being comfortable with your regression model not being perfect because it's an improvement for your client. It might be learning how to communicate to your client in a way that's not as granular as you might want to present it. Or it might be, learning how to refactor or merge your code with teammates and learning how to trust them. But give yourself space to learn your own patterns in a new environment. And that feels very loosey-goosey and kind of hippie, but that was the biggest thing I think that I've consistently encountered in the 2 years since I switched careers, is that the greatest challenges are not technical challenges. They're interpersonal challenges, or they're communication challenges, or they're challenges in learning how to manage yourself and recognizing your own points of weakness and opportunity.
I think that's a really good point. For what it's worth, it resonates with me to some point as well. I to some degree view myself as like a half career change, migrating from doing network engineering and administration for an MSP, and then moving into the information security vertical for a healthcare company. And it's a very different experience, and some of the habits that I had that were totally fine at the MSP were not so well adapted to the new environment. And to be fair, the new habits that have replaced those, I'm sure, wouldn't be so adapted to the MSP. So maybe there's something about, remain adaptable to what's going on around you there. And, just be mindful, or maybe be mindful that you're making a change, and that um, change sometimes requires change around it. I don't know. I think there's something there, maybe. Cool. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We definitely appreciate it. Big big shout out and thank yous to Courtney and Bob for coming on. Listening to you guys has been great. Having you guys tell us about, or you guy and gal tell us about, your jobs and the opportunities of getting into the field. These both look like really high growth um, positions or verticals. And, I would encourage anybody who has questions. Bob and Courtney are now in the Discord. So come on over and give us a chat. They're out there, and I'll make sure that they respond to you, or I'll respond on their behalf or something. So thank you very much for listening.
Bully them.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know them both now. So I'll bully them a little bit. So if I got,
We'll see.
I don't think I have to. They're both awesome people. So cool. Well, have a great one. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.